For as little as $1 per month, you can support independent journalism by supporting Mieum Media on Patreon. That's mere pocket change to support quality, local content creation. To subscribe, visit patreon.com/MIEUM Media. Thank you to all paid subscribers for helping to grow Mieum Media and for supporting independent journalism. In December 2018, Mieum Media published 2 videos about the history of Connecticut's borders. One discussed the notch in the northern border of the state. The other video covered the Panhandle in Connecticut's southwest corner. But in re-watching these videos, I realized that I made 2 mistakes. First, when discussing the Connecticut-New York border, I said, "This is the border of Rye, New York and Greenwich, Connecticut." While I may have been technically correct, locals told me that I was a bit inaccurate. Port Chester, a village within Rye, borders Connecticut. People who live in the area almost exclusively refer to the Greenwich bordering area of New York State as Port Chester, never Rye. But my second mistake was here. According to How the States Got Their Shapes by Mark Stein, when England ousted Holland for good in 1674, turning its land into Delaware, New Jersey, and New York, Connecticut's Pacific coast ruffled the feathers of New York. Many people may be surprised to learn that Connecticut once did have a Pacific coast. My mistake was in not explaining this further. Connecticut has some weird laws. For example, if a pickle does not bounce, it's not legally considered to be a pickle. In Hartford, crossing the street while walking on your hands is banned, and in Devon, walking backwards after sunset is prohibited. But perhaps the weirdest of all is the Charter of 1662, which established Narragansett Bay as the eastern boundary of the colony of Connecticut, and the South Sea as the western boundary. Narragansett Bay is in present-day Rhode Island, but the real point of interest here is that the Charter's mention of the South Sea refers to the Pacific Ocean. Here's a mock-up contrasting present-day borders and Connecticut's 1662 Charter. It boggles the mind to think of what this would have actually entailed if the boundary had stuck. The movie 8 Mile and the TV show The Office would have both taken place in Connecticut. New Haven-style pizza and Chicago deep dish would both be Connecticut specialties. And Connecticut would have had access to Long Island Sound, the Mississippi River, 2 Great Lakes, Utah's Great Salt Lake, as well as the Pacific Ocean. Okay. So why was Connecticut granted so much land in the 1662 Charter? The real answer can be summed up in one word: politics. Connecticut Colony's governor at the time was John Winthrop Jr., who had founded both the Saybrook Colony and the New London Colony. In addition to being a politician, Winthrop was also a respected scientist, who was able to use his connections in England to successfully lobby King Charles II. The king believed that Winthrop would be a good ally in his desire to consolidate power in the colonies. So in addition to granting Connecticut an absurd amount of land, it also gave Connecticut such a high degree of autonomy that the 1662 Charter was used as Connecticut's constitution until 1818. Spoiler alert, Charles II and Winthrop did not remain on such good terms. When it became apparent that Winthrop was not going to back the king's efforts, the tide shifted. A patent in March 1664 gave the Duke of York all the land from the west side of the Connecticut River to the east side of Delaware Bay. Border disputes between British colonies, the British Crown, and the Dutch in New York continued on for quite some time. If you're interested in hearing more about that history, please check out Mieum Media's video about Connecticut's southwestern panhandle, which discusses the New York-Connecticut border. But the story of Connecticut's Pacific coast doesn't end there. According to Barbara Austin at the Connecticut Historical Society, when Europeans began settling the Atlantic seaboard of what became the United States, no one knew how far the land extended. As a result, many colonies, including Connecticut, were given vague charters of conveyance that implied that they had rights to land far to their west. This led to numerous boundary disputes between the states. The new federal government stepped in to settle these disputes, and on September 13, 1786, Connecticut relinquished its claims, except for a 120-mile-long strip along Lake Erie, called the Western Reserve. Although the Western Reserve became part of the Northwest Territory in 1800, and then a part of Ohio in 1803, It's no coincidence that towns such as Norwich, Saybrook, New London, Litchfield, Mansfield, as well as Trumbull County, can still be found by Lake Erie in Ohio today. To get back to where we started, I definitely should have acknowledged this interesting history in the original video. But the larger story of how it came to be is definitely worth expounding upon. Speaking honestly, it's a little bit sad that such a quirky aspect of Connecticut history isn't more widely known.